Good day everyone, welcome in. It's been quite a while since I've uploaded anything due to not really having anything to update you with. That's as it stands. But now there are other things going on in the system, behind the scenes, that I have no power to control. And essentially I'm being backed into a corner where I'm inevitably is going to end up being the catapult that makes me homeless. None of these issues that have been raised over the past 5 years and previous have been resolved. So as I said, there's not really anything to update you with as such. We're in 2025, almost halfway through the year, and as I said, it's just a horrendous situation, and all I'm doing is trying to be patient and sending these notices and letters out to the relevant people who should reply to be able to give clarity. All this has been done under false pretense. And to be fair, I mean, this started, it wasn't just 2020 when this started, because, you know, whilst trying to explain the truth, there are so many illusions and it's difficult to grasp the severity of the situation. We just deal with each circumstance and each situation as it comes, and that's all we can do. So it's not through any fault of mine of not trying to reach these people in these positions so I can get some clarity, remedy, even true, honest justice, because I've been denied an audience at court on multiple occasions, and the treatment that I've received is very arbitrary. All I was standing for was truth and honest justice, and it's just been severely against the innocent party. So, you know, and they treat you like a criminal. They treat me like a criminal. I've got no malicious intention towards another. There's no criminal behaviour. I'm a lover, not a fighter, but I will protect myself and I will defend the less fortunate and the innocent. That's just in my nature. So it's important to give a little background about myself, really, which would help put into context a culture of abuse by official authority to which I've been held victim for over a decade now, and which culture continues in a relentless effort to conceal its own wrongs through the campaign of entrapment and forced default imposed by those committing such abuse. And this history starts stemming back to a period in my life in 2009 when I'd come back from Spain, and I was gainfully employed and establishing a career as a licensee pub and restaurant manager, and during that period I'd proven myself to be a trustworthy asset, and it led to a series of appointments reflecting this. And in 2011, based on that performance, I was appointed to take over a particular public house which, like other places, had previous problems and wasn't performing to its fullest potential, so to speak. And in around March 2012, that premises was thriving under my stewardship, and I was very proud of the position that I was in. And it was hard work. It's 7 days a week, 24/7 when you run pubs like this, and I run them on my own, so you can imagine. And when this at that time, 2012, I'd been in there quite some time, established the correct entertainment and what the people wanted in the area for that particular premises, and as I said, it was thriving. But a particular evening around that time, bearing in mind I'd never called police to the pub, never had any problems. All the problems that had been created, or that I'd been faced with, had always been dealt with fairly, and to each individual. People get drunk and people get loud, and that's what pubs was like. It was like running a creche for adults. That's what I used to say. But this particular evening I had a guy came in, and it was the end of the night, so he'd came in the side door, the back door, for however he got in, and he was known for carrying weapons, and he'd just come out of prison. So I told him that the pub was shut, and asked him to leave, and he refused, and he got very belligerent and aggressive. So when I moved to escort him off the premises, he became very aggressive, and he attacked me. He threw me over a table. So it was inevitable that in that position I had to use reasonable force to get this man off the premises. And somebody had helped me, and that's what we managed to do. And the police were called, statements were given. I mean, he was still throwing himself around the car park when I managed to get him out of the building, but that's not my problem. And the whole thing was just so intense. I'd never experienced that much, any violence like that towards me in my position, which was quite shocking. Yeah, and then so I'd give my statements to the police, and I lost my job. I lost my job because of these accusations. I had to give my dog away, and I ended up going back to Spain. But there was no official paperwork or anything to say. There was nothing to say that I couldn't leave the country. I wasn't told that I was a suspect. I'd give my statement, and that was that. So in 2012, December, I came back from Spain, and I was arrested at the airport by armed police for the charges of GBH, assault by wounding, and perverting the course of justice in relation to the previous events in this pub, where, as the landlady on her own, had not received any support by the authorities in that position, and actually from this point on I was deemed a violent criminal, and my reputation was ruined. They completely slandered, and it's all over the internet as well, these reports that was made at the time, and it seems like there was issues with that pub previous to me being appointed to that pub, which I knew nothing about. But after this I believe premeditated events that had happened, the whole history of that pub was related and made to believe that it was all down to the name, my name, the given name. So it completely ruined my reputation. If I was going to go into any positions like that before, like now, you have to mention it, obviously. But when you do mention it, it's trouble that obviously the employer would not want to bring, even though it's not true. It's still there for public knowledge to see, even though the facts are wrong. So eventually I went to court, and this was for, as I said, GBH, and my barrister was not very helpful at all. On the day of trial, after many preliminary hearings that had already taken place for quite some time, my barrister on the day of court had handed me a bit of paper and said that the only advice he can give me was for me to take an early plea bargain, and I would be looking at somewhere between 18 months and 3 years. It was prison sentence. I've never been to prison. I'm not a criminal. So it was shocking, and I refused to go along with what the barrister who had been appointed to me. I refused to go along with what he was saying. And I walked into court and declared my innocence, and the judge saw straight through everything. there was no more evidence to offer, which means it was all on the false pretense of expecting the woman to go guilty through fear and then have a prison sentence against the name, when she was just doing her job. As I said, I walked into court and said I was innocent, refused to take advice off the barrister, and the judge said, well, why is she here? She's fully within her rights to reject someone from the premises, and it sounds like he got what he deserved. Also stating that to the prosecution that I wouldn't want to run the Oak Tree pub, would you? So there was definitely a history there of that I was unaware of. But during these preliminary hearings that had been taking place over about a year period, I lost my little boy. My son Elijah was born prematurely and stillborn, and still to this day I can't find any reason to not link that to the stress and everything that was going on at the time. So it took a while to recover, and as I said, reputation been ruined of what you were building up. And I was very good at my job. I enjoyed it. It's a lifestyle, not just a 9 to 5. It was a lifestyle, and when that's taken away and you are deemed with criminality and malicious intentions, it can be quite soul quenching. It hurts. So I became a natural wellness advocate for a company called doTERRA, and I really enjoyed what I was doing there, doing my own research, online classes, and so I would be signing people up to this company to be able to get the natural products and oils and everything that the company produce. They have no toxins in, you see. This is where it all stemmed from, releasing toxicity and having the knowledge and doing the research into these things to help relieve your mood, help sleep, all these things that we need to be able to function at optimum capacity, the human body. And then when 2020 kicked in the pandemic, I spoke at quite a few different locations around the country, speaking at these peaceful gatherings, and I became very quickly targeted by the police, and there were many arrests. But in trying to establish clarity of what these arrests, on the evidence of what they acted upon to deem me a criminal or detain the woman and take her phone, which happened more than 5 times. They're detaining the woman, taking the phone, and obviously to gain information from the phone that they really don't have the right to do, unless there's evidence of a crime, and there is no evidence of a crime. Talking on a megaphone is not a crime, and I stand by everything I said back then, still to this day. I don't go around talking and speaking to the public with malicious intention. What I said I believe to be true, and I still believe to be true. So the court cases for these arbitrary arrests, kidnaps I call them, they started in November 2020, and some being dropped by the Crown Prosecution Service on the day of court, so it was just unnecessary effort, stress, preparation to then have the case dropped on the day of court. And I'd always put all my paperwork and affidavits and other evidence, they'd all be submitted to the court prior to the hearing, and I would do that by recorded delivery and by email, both to the court and to the Crown Prosecution Service prior to the hearing taking place. And then on the 2nd of February 2021, false information was placed onto the medical record stating that Keely had voiced suicidal thoughts, and that was false, completely false. I didn't say that, and I had no knowledge of that being put onto the record. The next day I was in court. Now I actually got that investigated, and it took them quite a while to get that false information taken off the medical record because I didn't say it, and it actually got taken off in December 2021. But by then, all the court cases had been taken place, and I believe it's had a real detrimental effect on my standing, my position, and how I was seen in these court cases. So the 3rd of February, I turned up to court, and I was refused access to the courtroom. I was already in the building, so I'd already been asked about a mask on entering into the building, the court building at Great Yarmouth Magistrates Court, and I claimed exemption, and that was that. But on standing outside the courtroom waiting to go in, the usher came out. The usher came out and stated that I must wear a mask, and I refused. I said I was claimed exemption, and I was kicked out of the court building by force by the usher and the security guard, who both agreed that if the police would come and ask them for a statement, they would give them, so they can clarify that I was there. And due to the request of the magistrate, or so-called request of the magistrate, and my refusal of wearing a mask, I was ejected from the court building. Now, 2 weeks later, on the 22nd, well, just over 2 weeks later, the 22nd of February, first thing in the morning, I had banging on my door, and it was armed police, declaring that they were there to arrest the woman due to fail to attend at court when I was at the court, and I was refused access to the courtroom. So it was all very premeditated. We'd even had the police at the court that day when I was doing a live video outside of the court building to explain what had happened. The court had called the police to come and disperse me and my supporters from outside the building, enforcing the rule of 6. So even the Norfolk Constabulary, whoever came to that job, or that request of coming to disperse us from outside the court, they knew who I was. I asked them to take my details. They knew I'd been ejected from the court, so it must be on record there in a CAD somehow, unless the court have got a backdoor number to have unofficial, unrecorded help from the police. So when I was released from the police station on the pretense of this fail to attend, the reason for release was because that case, the cases from the 3rd of February, where I was refused access to the court, there was 2 cases that day, and 2 cases to hear that day, 2 separate individual matters. So after being arrested for the fail to attend warrant, I was released from that kidnap with the information that the court that should have gone ahead on the 3rd of February was going ahead on the 23rd of March at Norwich Magistrates Court. So I turned up on the 23rd of March at Norwich Magistrates Court, and there was nothing on the system, and there was events that played out that day that now inevitably were fabricated and premeditated to spin a narrative that the woman is aggressive and trouble, when actually all I was doing was trying to seek honest justice. And this is where people actually get sent into your life to play a role, to essentially win your trust, and then they create these situations around you that then spin the narrative to a completely false truth, and that's what had happened. So there was nothing on the system on the 23rd of March. My ex started fighting with the security guards. If I'd have not protected him, I would have been in the wrong. If I had protected him like I did, I was in the wrong. I was accused of assaulting a security guard when all I was trying to do was trying to get them off him. He was screaming that he couldn't breathe. And as I said in my previous video, it was an Oscar-winning performance. And the 2 cases that were supposed to be heard on the 3rd of February, one of them was dropped on that day. So the fail to attend warrant, and then the proceedings afterwards, it was for one individual matter. So in that process of the fail to attend warrant, one matter, because there was 2 matters to deal with, one of them matters had been dropped. And as I said, all my paperwork was submitted previous. So was that an attempt to disappear that matter because the evidence and the paperwork and my truth and my case had been presented to the court and they knew they couldn't win? I'm just speculating here, but there seems to be so much tricks and lies and false narratives being projected towards a woman who's just trying to seek justice. And then, I won't go too much into it, but my dad passed away. He was put onto a ventilator, taken from my care. I had no say in it. I was refused to let me speak to him at the hospital. They said it wasn't convenient, and I never saw him again. And I had more problems with the courts. Most cases were sent to Cambridge after this due to they say a conflict of interest. But even in Cambridge, the court cases, I was turning up and the security guards would not let me into the court building. They called the police. So while I'm trying to gain access to the court to be able to go up and state my case into the courtroom, I was being restricted by court staff, court security and the police, Cambridge Police Constabulary, and the a guilty conviction would be established in my absence while I'm being restricted access to the court. I know, it's just so surreal explaining all this, because how does it happen? If the rule of law is followed and the procedures are followed as they should be, I should not be in this situation now. And I said it's just gone on and on and on and on. And a guilty conviction was established at Cambridge on the 11th of August. Now, I'd been given instructions to self-isolate by NHS on the 4th or 5th of August because my dad had been in my care. He was taken from my care on the 7th, and then I was due to appear at court on the 11th at Cambridge, 11th of August 2021. So I informed the court that I couldn't attend, not because I believe in the restrictions, but because I knew I had to protect myself, because whether I did or whether I didn't, I was going to be in the wrong. And the way they were trying to deem me a danger to the public was just horrendous. So I knew if I turned up to court that day, then I would be deemed as putting the public at risk, because I'd been given instructions to self-isolate. So I informed the court I couldn't attend. The case should have been adjourned to when I was able to attend, but they never took my excuse as legitimate. And even that day, a guilty conviction was established in my absence, while under instructions to self-isolate. And ever since then, nothing's been rectified. This warrant was out for the arrest of the woman for quite some time. I couldn't go to my dad's funeral. I had to make that decision. Very hard decision to make. But then you have to think, why was all this established? Why was all this created on false pretense around that time? I should have been there at my dad's funeral. I'm his daughter. I am his older daughter, his firstborn. And for some reason, all the events that took place restricted me from being able to go. And as my dad's firstborn and oldest daughter, to be able to say goodbye and do the things that I should do, even caring for him. It wasn't my or my dad's choice for the ambulance to come and pick him up. he never asked for an ambulance. So for him to be taken from my care and I never saw him again, it's just very harsh treatment from the authorities and the system in this country. And it's just been ongoing, as I said. I put in a civil claim, which was struck out in the house of the defendants. Obviously no conflict of interest there, obviously. And then a judicial review, I'd put an appeal in against this decision, with a guilty conviction in my absence whilst under instruction to self-isolate. I put an appeal in, and eventually it was seen by QC, who was the official recorder of Cambridge at the time. He instructed the court to send it to the High Court for judicial review, and stated that that court didn't have jurisdiction over this matter. He also invited comments from the Crown Prosecution Service, and I've not heard another word about it. I took that as the truth, that was the instruction for judicial review, so I thought I could relax a little bit. And I waited about a year, although the warrant was still outstanding. I waited around a year for this outcome, and I was informed that this judge had retired and there was no judicial review that had been issued in the system, so essentially the warrant for arrest was still out. They were just doing everything to try and dismiss my truth, the evidence, because my phone had been taken from the court when my ex-partner, or actor I'd like to say, was fighting with a security guard. I was arrested for assaulting a security guard, but they took my phone, and the phone held a video of all the events that happened that day, because the security wouldn't let me speak to a court official, so I'd already been recording as evidence for the record of what had happened, and the police took that phone and never gave it back. I was arrested, kidnapped on January the 8th. I'm trying to remember the year now, these just all roll into one, you see. I think it was 2023. Yeah, on the 8th of January 2023, Norfolk Constabulary primarily detained me, or Keeley, under the Incapacity Act, and this was disproven. They refused to let me go home. They took me to the hospital, and it was disproven. But because that was disproven, then Norfolk Constabulary enforced the outstanding warrant of the case that should have gone to judicial review. And as I said, this has just been going on and on and on. They took me from James Paget Hospital all the way to Ipswich, Bury St Edmunds police station overnight, bound over for court, and then to appear at Ipswich. Luckily enough, I was able to communicate with the judge in the courtroom, because they were trying to send me away. And it was sent back to Cambridge Magistrates, even though the judicial review had already been on the system. He sent it back to Cambridge, and then upon turning up to Cambridge Magistrates Court with my evidence and everything, and my many requests for this phone to be handed back, because this evidence on that phone, it's exonerating evidence, it proves the innocence, or at least the true argument of why I was there that day. I wasn't just there to cause trouble, but that's what they portrayed. So they ended up establishing or sentencing on that unsafe conviction that happened in my absence without the evidence, whilst under self-isolation instructions. And I've put the appeal in numerous times, again, once by recorded delivery post, which has been delivered, and also by email, and Cambridge is saying that they can't find the paperwork and nothing's been done about it. So the truth doesn't matter, nor does the rule of law, and nor does due process. So I had no choice. I wrote to the man doing business as king, with the intent that I can be aware in my heart that he is aware of all these actions being taken by agents under his authority towards me, and no rectifying of the situation or any remedy. And I've waited patiently, as I have been doing for the past 5 years, patiently, just trying to establish the truth on the record. But something's going on, because even when it is seen by officials and instructed to go to the higher up, where they don't, and these it's declared on the record that they do not have jurisdiction, yet they carry on, and 2 years later try to put the woman in prison while not acknowledging the truth. So I'm still in the thick of it, so to speak, and there's been no response from the man doing business as king. I mean, I wasn't expecting a formal response from him, but someone in his camp should reply to something so serious and not been ignored. All the evidence is there, but it doesn't matter. I'm English. I was born on God's green earth of England. I was anointed Church of England, and it seems there's no defender of the faith anymore. And I'm now being forced backed into a corner where inevitably I'm going to end up homeless. And once that happens, there's nowhere to respond to any of this. It's like it's deliberate. There's no excuse for it. So yeah, being backed into a corner of inevitably to become homeless, which means all the work, the notices, the letters, the communication that I've been working on is going to be worth nothing, because there's not going to be anywhere to respond to, inevitably. Me and she will just be forgotten about. So that's where everything still stands at the moment. And we just try and do our best. But it's been very isolating, the DVLA refusing to issue the driving licence. I want nothing more than to be able to, work and be successful in the things that I'm good at. But everything that I do is being converted into a crime. As a single landlady running pubs, and there was no really history of problems in her pubs, surely there should be support for those who stand in that position from the authorities. For her to just be deemed as a criminal, and it prevents me going back into that line of work, because to be truthful to the employer, I would have to mention it. And when I mention it, you become a hindrance and trouble to something. They'll always employ somebody else who hasn't had this experience. But then if you don't mention it, like I said, it's all over the internet. The report that was done on that pub, which relates to incidences and the problems that were going on way before I even was appointed to that premises. There's no names in that. It's summed up with a little bow at the end with the name that was given to me, making it seem, and it does seem like I was the problem in there. But I'd only been in there a short amount of time, and in that time it was thriving. So they were trying to revoke the licence of the premises due to previous problems for whatever reason that I'm not aware of. And that guy, who was a criminal, who'd been in prison, who's known for carrying weapons, came into my pub and I had to deal with it. I am then deemed a criminal for ejecting him. from the premises after he's thrown me over a table. And this same guy now is now a trainee lawyer. A trainee lawyer going into the courts and defending people as per the rule of law and procedure, as it should be. But it doesn't sit right with me. And he's also in the vicinity of where the company that I was advocating for and where I used to get my products from, they used to come straight to the door by Royal Mail, recorded delivery, and I was satisfied with that. But in recent events over the past year, a couple of years, post office are no longer delivering them. There is a UK base for this company now, and the depot, so these products are certified pure, and as I said, I've had no problem up until recently where these products are being dispatched from the secured warehouse to be delivered to the individual who's ordered them, but they were being held at a new delivery company depot for days, and these were certainly being tampered with. And as I said, that trainee lawyer who came into my pub all them years ago, who's now a trainee lawyer, he's in that vicinity, that same block in the area. So I've now, to protect myself, I've had to suspend my advocacy with the company due to the knowledge of my products that I take internally that I use for wellness are being tampered with during transit to me. No response from the man doing business as king. No results from the judicial review that never got put on the system. The civil claim that over £4,000 was paid for the procedure to protect me. It was issued with a human rights issue, and evidently should have been sent straight to the High Court, but the Ministry of Justice got involved with this. It was not complex at all, this case. It was just negligence, refusing access to justice, and they required many extensions which strung out the due process and the procedure. And it was only when the guilty conviction was established at Cambridge in my absence, whilst under self-isolation instructions, that the civil claim was actually acted upon, and it was sent to Great Yarmouth Magistrates Court, which was where who the case was against. So essentially it was struck out in the house of the defendants. This is not justice. So that was a summary of things that have been going on. And all I can do is be patient. My heart goes out to Lucy Connolly and her family right now, especially her daughter. I think it's horrendous that that woman has been imprisoned for a tweet. And I think it's more horrendous that they would deprive that young girl of these important years of her life from having her mother. It's sick. And she may have said something in the heat of the moment on a tweet. But what she said is not far from what God said in the text. Go to Ezekiel. Go to Ezekiel, the book of Ezekiel, where God says about stoning and burning down this and that. Just go to the book, it's there. It was horrendous what happened to them children, and any mother would be grieving for the unnecessary treatment of them innocent children, but then to be deemed as a criminal for voicing an opinion. I think you should go to the book of Ezekiel and have a look what God says in that book, because God spoke to Ezekiel. And this is way back in the early 6th century, before Christ. God spoke them words. maybe not to the T, to the exact word, but God feels anger too. Evil is evil and good is good, and it seems like the whole thing has been converted round. I hope that wasn't a bit too long, and as I said, other than summarising everything, there's not much I can do, but I'm okay. It's been a while since I've uploaded anything, so I thought I'd come on and just say hi, sending you all lots of love and peace that hopefully one day we will all experience. Take care, guys.